Bastogne, Belgium. The brutal winter of 1944. The cold didn't just bite. It tore straight through our uniforms, right into the bone. We were fighting in the Ardennes, and hell had frozen over. Inside the shattered barn, Jackson's rifle barrel was steady, aimed right at her head. "Do it, Elias, or I will." His voice was ragged, broken by the cold and 3 days of fighting. We'd just taken this German command post. The place stank of cordite, fear, and frozen blood. We'd found 3 enemy soldiers surrendering, but she was hidden under a pile of soiled hay. A radio operator, maybe. Young, terrified. She looked at us with wide eyes, her gray uniform soaked, blonde hair matted with mud. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "Jackson, lower the weapon," I said. My voice was low, trying not to sound like an order even though it was. "Lower the weapon?" He laughed. A dry, ugly sound. "Elias, you see what they did to Sweet back in Hurtgen? They strung him up. And you want to save her? She's just like them. She's a prisoner of war, Sergeant. She's dead weight." Another soldier, Nails, spat. "We're low on ammo. And you want to drag a kraut with us? Have you lost your damn mind, man?" I looked at the girl. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the rifle. Then I looked at Jackson, my friend. I moved, putting my own body between his rifle and the prisoner. I spoke, and this time the steel was in my voice. "Lower the weapon, now." The silence in the barn grew so heavy it could suffocate you. That's when they started calling me crazy. Impossible choices define who we really are in war. If you believe humanity is worth defending, even in hell, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. You need to know what happened to this prisoner. My name is Corporal Elias Eli Thorne. I served with the 701st Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers, and we were the first all-black armored unit to see combat, and we fought under General Patton himself. As I said, this was the winter of 1944. The Battle of the Bulge was raging. We were freezing, low on supplies, and surrounded by enemies. And when I say enemies, I'm not just talking about the Germans. To our own army, we were tools. Tools they didn't want to admit they needed. We were fighting for Europe's freedom while being denied our own back home. We were fighting an army that believed in a master race while being commanded by another one that practiced segregation. You learn to hate quickly in a war. Hate keeps you warm. Hate makes you pull the trigger. Hate is simple. But what happens when that simple line gets blurred? My men, my brothers, they called me crazy. Maybe I was. Because on that day, in that frozen barn in Belgium, I looked at the enemy and made a decision that would change not just my war, but who I was forever. And it all started with a choice: to save one life that everyone else wanted to take. The seconds in that barn stretched out, frozen hard by the Belgian winter. My M1 Garand was heavy in my hands, but it wasn't pointed at Jackson. Not yet. His was still leveled at the girl. "I won't say it again, Sergeant," I said, my voice cutting through the frosty air. Jackson's eyes, bloodshot and weary from 72 hours of continuous combat, bored into mine. He was a good man. He was my friend. But war chews up good men and spits out something else. He saw Sweet in Hurtgen. He saw what the SS did to a black man they caught. To Jackson, this wasn't war anymore. It was vengeance. "You're making a mistake, Corporal," he whispered, his voice shaking with a rage that was colder than the air. "Maybe," I replied, "but it's my mistake to make. She's a POW. That's the rule. We follow the rules." "Rules?" Nails laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. He gestured at his own face. "Are we in their rules, Eli? When they see us, do they see soldiers or do they just see targets? They ain't got rules for us." He was right. We all knew it. To the Germans, we were a special kind of insult. Subhumans, they called us, fighting for a country that treated us almost as badly. But I couldn't let that be my excuse. I couldn't let their hate become my own. Jackson's rifle barrel twitched. He looked from me to the girl, who was now weeping silently, a dark stain spreading on the leg of her trousers. He spat on the hay-covered floor. "Fine." He lowered the rifle, the click of the safety engaging echoing like a gunshot in the small space. "She's your problem, Corporal. You feed her, you guard her, and when she shivs you in the night, I'll be the one to say I told you so." He turned and stalked away, slamming the butt of his rifle against a wooden beam. "Nails, check that radio equipment. Let's strip this place before the artillery finds us." The tension broke, but it didn't disappear. It just settled, like soot, over everything. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I turned to the girl. She flinched, scrambling back against the wall. "Hey," I said softly. I held up my hands, empty. "It's okay." I unslung my rifle and let it hang on my shoulder. A deliberate show of non-aggression. I pointed to myself. "Elias." She just stared. "Wasser?" I tried. "Water?" She shook her head, or maybe she was just trembling. I unhooked my canteen and tossed it to her. It landed in her lap. She looked at it, then at me, as if expecting it to explode. "Go on," I said, gesturing. Slowly, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She unscrewed the cap and took a small, desperate sip. "All right," I said, more to myself than to her. "We gotta move." I pulled a length of rope from my pack. Her eyes widened in panic again. "I'm not gonna hurt you," I said, frustrated. "Gotta tie your hands, prisoner, you understand? Gefangener." I motioned to her wrists. She presented them, closing her eyes tightly as if expecting a blow. I tied her hands in front of her, not as tight as Jackson would have, but secure enough. I couldn't bring myself to be brutal. That, I was learning, was my problem. "Radio's shot, Eli," Nails called from the corner. "But I found maps. And schnapps." "Leave the booze," I said. "Bring the maps." "Jackson, report in. Tell command we've secured the crossroads, 3 male EPWs and 1 female. Jackson crouched over our field radio, gave me a look of pure contempt. "1 female? You want me to say that? You want them to think we're all crazy? Just make the call, Sergeant." He thumbed the transmitter. "Panther 6 to Panther Actual. Crossroads secure. Light resistance neutralized. We have 4 EPWs for processing. Requesting instructions. Over." A crackle of static came back. "Panther Actual to 6. Good work. Hold position. Relief element from Dog Company is inbound, ETA 30 mics. And confirm EPW count. 4. Over." Jackson looked at me. I nodded. "Confirm," he growled into the handset. 4. Over. "Solid copy, 6. Actual out. 30 minutes. 30 minutes in this frozen hellhole that the entire German army probably knew we had taken. "We're not waiting," I said, making the call. "Artillery will have this place dialed in any second. We fall back to the rally point at the creek. We'll meet Dog Company there." "And her?" Nails jerked a thumb at the girl, who was still huddled by the wall, clutching my canteen. "She walks." "The hell she does," Jackson said, standing up. "She's a liability. She'll slow us down. We're 2 miles from the creek, Eli. Through 2 feet of snow. Then she'd better walk fast," I said, grabbing my pack. The 3 male prisoners, Wehrmacht soldiers well into their 40s, looked relieved to be captured. We'd tied them to a piece of destroyed farm equipment outside. I detailed Nails to retrieve them. "You're not in charge, Corporal," Jackson said, stepping in front of me. "No," I said, meeting his gaze. "But I'm right. And right now, that's all that matters. We're moving." For another long second, we stared each other down. He was bigger than me, angrier than me, but I was the one who had made the call. He stepped aside. "On your head, Eli. On your goddamn head." The march to the creek was the longest 2 miles of my life. We put the male prisoners in the front, followed by Nails. Then the girl. I walked behind her, and Jackson took the rear, covering our tracks. Every step was agony. The snow was deep. The wind was a razor. The girl was wearing thin, worn-out boots, and she kept stumbling and falling. The first time she went down, Nails just yanked her up by the rope on her wrists. "Get up, Fräulein. No time for napping." The second time, she just lay there sobbing into the snow. "Leave her." Jackson's voice came from the back of the column. "She's faking. Let the cold take her." "We leave no one," I said, the words tasting like ash because I wasn't sure if I believed them. I walked up to her and hauled her to her feet. She was light, almost nothing. Just a collection of bones and a wet uniform. She couldn't have been more than 18. "Walk," I ordered, pushing her forward. "Schnell." She stumbled, but she kept moving. That's when I heard them. The muttering. Jackson and Nails. Lost his mind. Gonna get us all killed. Over a piece of kraut. Plain crazy. There it was. The word, crazy. Not because I was seeing things. Not because I was shell-shocked. But because I had chosen to be humane. In the middle of the Battle of the Bulge, I had decided a human life was worth saving, even if it wore the wrong uniform. To them, it was the ultimate insanity. We were halfway to the creek when the first shell landed. A screaming Mimi, a Nebelwerfer rocket. It landed 50 yards to our left, exploding in a shower of snow, dirt, and white-hot shrapnel. Everyone hit the dirt. The male prisoners were praying in German. The girl was just a small frozen ball next to me. "See?" Jackson yelled over the ringing in my ears. "They're zeroing in, I told you. We're sitting ducks." Another rocket screamed overhead. "Move," I shouted, pulling the girl up. "Run! To the creek! Go! Go! Go!" We weren't soldiers anymore. We were just running. We scrambled, fell, and clawed our way through the snow, the rockets chasing us. We tumbled down the embankment to the creek, landing in a frozen, muddy heap, just as another barrage turned the woods we had just left into an inferno. We lay there gasping for air. We were alive. All of us. Nails was the first to speak, checking his rifle. "Well, the girl's got luck anyway. Or maybe the devil looks after his own." I looked at her. She was covered in mud, her hands raw from the ropes and the cold. She looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see an enemy. I just saw a terrified kid. Jackson crawled over to me, his face a mask of snow and fury. "That," he panted, "was the stupidest goddamn thing I've ever seen. You are crazy, Elias." He jabbed a finger at the girl. "And that thing is going to be the death of us all." I just pulled myself to my feet and looked at the men from Dog Company, just now arriving and looking at us like we were ghosts. The problem was, I was starting to think Jackson was right. The Dog Company men were ghosts in white winter camouflage, materializing from the snowy woods bordering the creek. They were white. All of them. We, the 761st, were attached to Patton's Third Army, but we were almost always segregated. Seeing them was a reminder of which army we really served. A young lieutenant, barely old enough to shave, slid down the embankment, his pristine M1 carbine looking more like a toy than a weapon. He took in the scene. Me, Jackson, Nails, our faces black with grime and frost. The three terrified Wehrmacht prisoners. And finally his eyes landed on the girl. He stopped, blinked, and then let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Well, I'll be," he said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of a man who had never been questioned. "What in the Sam Hill is this? You boys from the 761st actually managed to catch yourselves a Fräulein." Jackson tensed beside me. I stepped forward, my boots cracking the ice on the creek's edge. "Corporal Thorne, 761st. We secured the crossroads at grid 48A. These are 4 enemy prisoners for processing." The lieutenant's smile faded. He looked at me as if I were a piece of equipment that had just started talking. He didn't address me. He turned to his sergeant, a hard-looking man with tobacco stains in his beard. "Sergeant, get your men, process these prisoners." The Dog Company NCOs moved in, rough and efficient, yanking the 3 male prisoners to their feet. "Off, schnell! On your feet, you filthy krauts!" Then the lieutenant looked back at the girl, who was trying to make herself invisible against the muddy bank. "Not her," he said. A cold pit formed in my stomach, one that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Sir? Not her," he repeated, clipping the words. "We're a combat element, Corporal. We're moving to support the 101st. We don't have the men, the time, or the inclination to babysit her." He gestured at her with contempt. "She's not a soldier. She's not on any damn manifest. We don't take female prisoners." "Sir, she's a prisoner of war," I said, my voice hardening. "She was captured in a German command post. She's military personnel. She's a radio operator at best, a camp follower at worst." The lieutenant scoffed. "And she's your problem. Our orders are to secure male combatants. You caught her, you keep her. Or you can do what you should have done in the first place." He tapped the holster of his .45. "Save yourself the trouble. Now, clear this area, Corporal. We're moving up." He didn't wait for a reply. He turned his back on me and started barking orders at his own men. In his world, the conversation was over. The Dog Company sergeant looked at me, spat a stream of brown tobacco juice onto the snow, and just shook his head. "Your funeral, Panther," he muttered, and hauled the last of the male prisoners up the bank. And just like that, they were gone, melting back into the white woods. We were alone again. Just us, the girl, and the sound of distant artillery. The silence that followed was louder than the shelling had been. It was Jackson who broke it. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just laughed. It was a terrible sound, empty and broken. "Well, Corporal," he said, walking right up to me, his face inches from mine. "You heard the man. She's our problem. Our problem, Elias. You happy now? You feel right? Jackson, You what? He snapped, his voice finally cracking. You gonna tell me the rules? You gonna quote the Geneva Convention? 'Cause that white boy lieutenant just wiped his ass with your rules. He looked at you, he looked at us, and he saw a joke. A bunch of crazy Negroes playing soldier dragging some German girl through the snow. He's just one officer, man, Nails said, trying to de-escalate, but he wouldn't look me in the eye. He's all of 'em, Jackson roared, wheeling on him. He's the whole damn army. Don't you see? We're the only ones who have to follow the rules, and we're the only ones who get screwed by 'em. This ain't our war, Eli, and your humanity is gonna get us buried in a trench. He kicked a chunk of frozen mud. I'm done with this. He slung his rifle over his shoulder. I'm not guarding her, I'm not feeding her, you made the call, she's on you. He stalked off to the edge of the creek, found a fallen log and sat down, his back to me, his back to the problem. Nails just looked at me, his face full of pity, which was worse. He's right, Eli. You know he's right. What are we gonna do with her, man? We can't take her with us. We can't leave her. We're not leaving her, I said, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. And we're not doing anything else. I looked at the girl. She was watching me, her blue eyes wide with a terror that was now mixed with a strange kind of confusion. She had expected the dog company soldiers to take her. Now she was stuck with the men who had argued over killing her. I sighed, the air fogging in front of my face. I unclipped my mess kit and my last K-ration. It was the ham and eggs, the one everyone hated. I walked over and opened the can. I handed it to her, along with my spoon. She flinched when I got close. She looked at the ration, then at me. Eat, I said. Essen. Her hands were still tied. She fumbled with the spoon, the ropes making it almost impossible. She was shaking so badly she dropped it in the mud. I watched her stare at the spoon, and for the first time her terror seemed to break. Her shoulders slumped and a dry, racking sob escaped her. She wouldn't be able to eat. With another sigh, I knelt in the mud in front of her. Give me your hands. She held them out, eyes shut tight again. I pulled my trench knife. She let out a sharp gasp and Nails shouted, Eli, what are you doing? I ignored him. I turned the knife and sawed through the wet, frozen rope. It fell away, leaving her wrists red and raw. She stared at her hands, then at me. I picked up the spoon, wiped it on the cleanest part of my trousers and handed it back to her, along with the ration can. Just eat, I said, my voice softer than I intended. She took it. This time she didn't spill. She ate like a starving animal, shoveling the cold, congealed eggs into her mouth, tears streaming down her face and mixing with the food. What's your name? I asked, not even sure why. She paused, mid-bite. Was? Your name. I pointed to my chest. Elias. I pointed to her. You. She swallowed. Hannah, she whispered. Just Hannah. Well, Hannah, I said, standing up. Welcome to the 761st. A crackle from the radio on Jackson's back cut through the moment. He ignored it. Jackson, the radio, I yelled. He let it crackle again, a final act of defiance. Then, with agonizing slowness, he unshouldered it and picked up the handset. Panther 6, he said, his voice dead. He listened for a moment, his face unchanging. Yeah, we're at the creek. We met Dog. Yeah. No, they didn't, He looked at me. They couldn't take all the cargo. We still have the package. He listened again, and then his face went pale under his dark skin. Say again, actual? He listened. Understood. He hung up the handset, his movement stiff. What is it? I asked. Jackson stood up. He walked over to me, and the look in his eyes was one I'd never seen before. It was beyond anger. It was despair. That was command, he said, his voice flat. The 101st at Bastogne are getting hit. A new Kraut offensive just broke through the line 5 miles north of us. They're trying to cut the Third Army in half. And us? Nails asked, already checking his ammo. We're not falling back, Jackson said, his eyes locked on mine. Command says the line is too thin. We're the only armor element in this sector. Our new orders are to move forward. We're to proceed to the village of St. Vith, hold the main crossroads there, at all costs. My blood ran cold. St. Vith, that was towards the German breakthrough. And, Eli, Jackson said, a cruel smile touching his lips for the first time. We're moving out, now, so you'd better get your package ready to march. Understood. Proceeding. Here is Chapter 3. Chapter 3, 1200 words. Move to St. Vith, at all costs? Nails's voice was a strained whisper, as if saying it too loud would make it true. They're sending 3 men. 3 men and a tank crew with no tank. To hold a crossroads? We're not a tank crew, Nails. I snapped, my nerves frayed. We're dismounted scouts for the battalion, and those are the orders. My M1 felt impossibly heavy. We'd lost our Sherman Jezebel 2 days ago to a Panzerfaust. We were tankers forced to fight as grunts, and we were miles from the rest of the 761st. They're sending us to die, Jackson said, his voice flat. He was no longer angry, he was just empty. That scared me more than his rage. They're plugging a hole with our bodies, and they don't even care. He looked at Hannah. She had finished the ration and was huddled in a ball, her eyes darting between us, understanding the shift in our tone. And we're taking her, Jackson continued, his voice dangerously soft. We're gonna march into the biggest German offensive since 1940, with a German prisoner. He shook his head and let out that same broken laugh. Crazy. We're not just crazy, Eli. We're dead. We're not dead yet, I said, forcing a strength I didn't feel. We're soldiers, we have our orders, we move. I looked at Hannah. My problem. My responsibility. On your feet, Hannah. Los. We're moving. She looked at my outstretched hand, then placed her own small, raw hand in mine, and I pulled her up. She weighed nothing. Nails. You're on point, I ordered. Jackson, watch our 6. I've got the prisoner. Keep your eyes peeled. We're in enemy territory now. For real. The march to St. Vith was a quiet, frozen nightmare. We moved through shattered forests, the snow marked by the tracks of panzers and the bloody footprints of retreating GIs. The sky was a low, bruised purple, and the constant dull whoomph of artillery got closer with every step. Hannah was weak. After the first mile, her steps began to falter. She was still wearing the thin boots she'd been captured in, and they were soaked through. I can't, she whispered, half in German, half in broken English, as she stumbled for the 10th time. Get up, I said, pulling her by the arm. You walk or you die here. I'm not carrying you. Jesus, Eli, Nails muttered from the front. Just leave her, or give her your goddamn coat. You're gonna get us all killed, I swear. I looked at him, then at her. She was shivering so violently I thought she might break apart. I was cold, but she was freezing to death. Stop, I said. The column halted. What now? Jackson's voice was a low growl from the rear. She need a smoke break? I ignored him. I unzipped my field jacket. It was the only thing between me and the biting wind, but it was insulated. Take off your uniform jacket, I said to her. She looked at me in terror. What? No? Take it off, it's wet. It's killing you. I took mine off, the cold hitting me like a physical blow. I thrust it at her. Put this on. Now. She stared at the jacket, then at me. Elias, you are officially insane, Nails said, turning around to face me. That's your jacket, man, you'll freeze. Put it on, Hannah, or I swear I'll put it on you myself. Her hands were shaking, but she unbuttoned her wet gray tunic. Underneath, she wore a thin wool undershirt. Her skin was pale and covered in goosebumps. She dropped the wet tunic in the snow and quickly, awkwardly, put on my jacket. It was huge on her, swallowing her small frame, the sleeves hanging past her fingers. But it was warm. It was dry. All right, I said, my teeth already starting to chatter. I was left in my wool shirt and harness. Let's move. We walked. And now, the muttering was gone. The open contempt was gone. My men, my brothers, just looked at me with a kind of baffled horror. I had crossed a line. I had given my warmth, my protection to the enemy, while my own men suffered. In their eyes, I wasn't just crazy for saving her. I had become a traitor. We walked for another hour. The silence from Jackson and Nails was worse than any argument. I could feel their eyes on my back. I was colder than I'd ever been in my life, my arms numb, my core shivering uncontrollably. We crested a small hill and saw it. St. Vith, or what was left of it. It was a small Belgian town, or had been. Now it was a smoking ruin. The crossroads we were sent to hold was a cratered intersection, and a German Tiger tank was sitting right in the middle of it, its long 80-8 Minier cannon pointing down the road, daring anyone to approach. A red and black swastika flag hung limply from a shattered church steeple. The Germans weren't coming to St. Vith. They were already here. Get down, I hissed, pulling Hannah down into the snow behind a low stone wall. Jackson and Nails dropped beside us, their faces ashen. Well, Jackson whispered, his breath fogging. There's your crossroads, Corporal. You want to go ask him to move. Command said, hold the crossroads. Nails stammered, his eyes wide with fear. They're on the crossroads. Our orders are shot, I said, my mind racing, trying to get my frozen brain to work. We're not taking on a tiger with 3 rifles. We need to fall back. Report. Fall back, Jackson said. Fall back where, Eli? We're 5 miles behind their front line. We're not soldiers anymore. We're just meat waiting to be ground. A burst of machine gun fire, an MG-42, ripped through the air over our heads, spanging off the stone wall. Ch-ch-chunk. They saw us, Nails yelped, burying his head. No, Hannah whispered, her voice tight. I looked at her. She was staring at the town, my jacket clutched around her neck. What did you say? I demanded. They do not see us, she said, her English halting but clear. That is, Sicherungsfeuer, covering fire. They are clearing the houses. They are looking for partisans. I stared at her. How do you know that? She looked at me, her blue eyes sharp, the fear replaced by a strange, cold calculation. Because I know the officer in that town, Hauptmann Kessler. He is from my unit. He is a very thorough man. He will not stop until every house is clear. We cannot go forward. And we cannot go back. They will have patrols on the roads. The Tiger's main gun fired with a deafening crack boom, sending a shell into a house on the edge of town, which erupted in a cloud of wood and fire. We were trapped. Trapped by the German breakthrough, stuck between a Tiger tank and patrols that were hunting us. And the only person who seemed to understand the situation was the German girl I had just given my jacket to. Jackson saw it too. He crawled over to me, pushing his helmet back. The despair was gone, replaced by a new terrifying idea. Eli, he said, his voice low. She knows them. So? She's not a prisoner, Eli. She's a map. He looked at Hannah, his eyes narrowing. She's a shield. They won't just start shooting if we have one of their own, will they? Especially a Fräulein. I knew what he was suggesting. Use her as a human shield. A white flag. No, I said. No. Jackson's voice rose. You see another way out? You gonna walk up to that Tiger and tell him about your rules? You're the one who wanted to keep her alive, Eli. You're the one who called her a prisoner. Well, congratulations. Now she's the only damn thing that might keep us from getting torn to pieces by that machine gun. He looked at me, my teeth chattering, my body shaking with cold. You're crazy, Elias. You've been crazy this whole time. But maybe, he said, looking at Hannah with a cold, appraising stare. Your brand of crazy is exactly what we need. I looked at the girl who was now watching me, not with fear, but with a sudden, desperate intelligence. She knew what we were saying without understanding the words. She knew her life and ours had just become a bargaining chip, and I, freezing to death in the snow, was the one who had to decide how to play it. No. The word was barely a whisper, my frozen jaw struggling to form it. No? Jackson's voice was incredulous. He crawled closer, his face a mask of fury. No? What do you mean, no? Did you not see the Tiger tank? Did you not hear the Heil Hitlers? We have 2 options, Elias. We use her to get out or we die in this ditch. There is no third. We're not using her as a shield, I said, my voice shaking from the cold, but firm in its resolve. We're not walking out there with a gun to her head. That's not who we are. That's not what we do. What we do. Jackson laughed, a harsh, bitter bark. What we do is follow your rules right into a grave. I'm not dying for your morals, Eli. I'm not dying because you're too damn crazy to see the only way out. He grabbed his rifle. I'm doing it. Give her here. Jackson, stop. I raised my M1, the barrel wavering. My arms were numb, my fingers stiff. I wasn't sure I could even pull the trigger. You're gonna shoot me? He said, his voice dropping to a whisper of disbelief. After all this? After France? After Hurtgen? You're gonna shoot me? For her? I'm not letting you, I said, my teeth chattering. I'm not letting you become them. Stop. It was Hannah. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the argument like a knife. We both froze, turning to look at her. She had crawled forward, my field jacket bunched around her. She was looking not at us but at the town, her mind clearly working. He is right, she said, her voice shaking. You go there. She pointed at the main street. You die. He, Hauptmann Kessler, he will shoot you. He will shoot me. He will not care. See? Jackson spat. Even she knows it's a death sentence, so we go back. No, Hannah said, shaking her head. The patrols. They come. You said, Schnellfeuer, covering fire. She pointed back the way we came. But it is not. It is Suchfeuer, hunting fire. They are sweeping the woods. You go back, you die. A cold dread settled over us, heavier than the snow. Forward was death. Back was death. So what do we do, Fräulein? Nail's voice was strained. Just sit here and freeze? Hannah pointed to a dark line in the snow, a shallow depression that ran parallel to the road, leading away from the town and deeper into the woods, toward a small, dark copse of pine trees. There, she said. The Bach, the ditch. It is a drainage for the fields. I looked. It was barely cover, maybe 3 feet deep, full of snow and frozen mud. It leads where? I asked, my voice low. To the woods, and, in the woods, there is a Jägerhütte, a hunter's cabin. My father. We used it. She was looking at me, her eyes pleading. It is not on the maps. Kessler does not know it. It is safe. Maybe. It was a trap. It had to be a trap. A hunter's cabin. Jackson scoffed. You think we're stupid? A cabin where all your Freunde are waiting? No thanks, we're not moving from this wall. Another burst from the MG-42, this one closer. Zeep! Bullets snapped through the air just over our heads, clipping the branches of a tree to our right. They're walking the fire, Nails yelped, pressing his body so flat against the snow he looked like he was trying to melt into it. They're zeroing in on this wall. We gotta move. We gotta move now. This was it. The hardest moment. Stay here and die by machine gun fire. Go back and die by patrol. Go forward and die by Tiger. Or trust her. Trust the enemy. Eli, don't, Jackson said, his voice low, grabbing my arm. Don't be a fool. It's a trap. It's our only chance, I said, my mind made up. The choice was crazy. It was illogical. It was everything my training screamed against. And it was all we had. I looked at Hannah. You lead, but you are not a prisoner. I unhooked my .45 pistol from my belt, my fingers fumbling with the clasp. Eli, what in God's name? Nails whispered. I didn't give her the gun. I held it out. You will not run, I said to her. But you are not tied. I put the gun back in its holster. It was a gesture, a sign of something. I wasn't sure what. Trust? Insanity? I looked at my men. She's not our shield. She's not our prisoner. She's our guide. We follow her. That's an order. Jackson just stared at me, his face carved from dark ice. He looked like he had been struck. An order. God help us all, Elias. You really are crazy. Maybe, I said, pulling myself to my feet. But I'm the crazy man in charge. Nails, you're second. I'm third. Jackson, you're on our 6. If I'm wrong, you can tell me I told you so after you shoot me. But for now, we move. Hannah, I said, go. She scrambled out of the cover of the wall and half fell, half slid into the drainage ditch. I followed, the frozen mud sucking at my boots. Then Nails. Then Jackson, his face a mask of bitter resignation. The ditch was hell. It was a shallow, frozen, winding snake of a trench. We were bent double, the cold water soaking through my pants, my shivering now so violent it was hard to hold my rifle. The MG-42 opened up again, and the sound was horribly close, the bullet snapping over the lip of the ditch. They knew we were here. They just didn't know where. Hannah moved with a desperate, animal-like speed. She wasn't just escaping. She was fleeing. She knew this land. She scrambled over frozen culverts under fallen logs, always keeping to the lowest ground. We moved for what felt like an eternity. My lungs burned. My legs were numb. The sounds of the battle for St. Fifth faded, replaced by the howling wind and the crunch of our boots in the snow. After 20 minutes, Hannah suddenly stopped, holding up a hand. I dropped to a knee, scanning the woods. What? Shh, she whispered. Then I heard it. Not German. English. Goddamn patrol. Whole sector's hot. A few yards ahead through the pines were 3 GIs. Dog company. The same ones who had left us at the creek. It's dog company, Nails hissed, a wave of relief in his voice. We're safe. Hey, Shut up! I hissed, pulling him down. But it was too late. Who's there? A voice barked. Show yourselves. Hands up. We stood up. Slowly, our hands raised. The 3 GIs burst through the trees, their rifles leveled. It was the same hard-bitten sergeant with the tobacco-stained beard. He looked at us. Then his eyes fell on Hannah, standing behind me, wearing my jacket. His face, which was hard, became stone. Well, well, he spat, his eyes filled with a cold, murderous hatred I hadn't seen before. If it ain't the Panther boys. And you brought your goddamn kraut girlfriend with you. Sergeant, I said, trying to lower my hands. Shut your mouth, he snapped. He jerked his rifle. You are a disgrace. He looked at his men. We just got word. A Panther patrol, matching your description, let a kraut prisoner go. One that had maps of our positions. My blood turned to ice. What? No, she's been with us. Yeah, the sergeant sneered. Looks like she has. He took a step closer, his gaze fixed on Hannah. They're saying a Fräulein radio operator got away, and 10 minutes later, a whole Nebelwerfer barrage walked right into Dog Company's assembly area. We lost 12 men, Panther. 12. Because of you. No, I whispered. That's impossible. It's treason, he said, his voice deadly quiet. And I know what to do with traitors. And they're spies. He raised his rifle, not at me, but at Hannah. The sergeant's M1 Garand was rock steady. His finger was tight on the trigger, his knuckles white. Say your prayers, Fräulein. No. I moved. I did the only thing I could. The same thing I'd done in the barn. I stepped in front of her. My M1 was at my side, not pointed at him. My body was the only shield I had. Get out of the way, Corporal. The sergeant's voice was a low, venomous hiss. That's a direct order. You are interfering with a field execution. You're making a mistake, Sergeant, I said, my voice shaking, half from cold, half from adrenaline. She's been with us every second. She never left our sight. It's impossible. Your intel is wrong. My intel is 12 dead men. He roared, his face purple with rage. And you, a colored boy in a white man's army, telling me my intel is wrong? You're a traitor, and you're protecting a spy. He chambered a new round. The clack-clack was deafening. I said, move, or I'll shoot you first and her second. The other 2 Dog Company GIs had their rifles up. One was aimed at me. The other was aimed at Jackson and Nails. The air was thick with murder. This was it. This was how we died. Not by a German bullet, but by an American one in a frozen ditch over an impossible choice. I looked at Jackson. His face was unreadable. He'd called me crazy. He'd called me a fool. He'd all but given up on me. This was my fault. I had brought this on us. Sergeant. Jackson's voice cut through the tension. It was quiet. It was calm. It was the calmest I'd heard it since before the battle. What? The sergeant snapped, his eyes not leaving me. You're right about one thing, Jackson said, taking a slow step forward. Oh yeah? The sergeant sneered. What's that? He's crazy, Jackson said, nodding at me. This man, he pointed his chin at me, is the craziest, most hard-headed, rule-following fool I have ever had the displeasure of serving with. He'd probably quote the Geneva Convention to a firing squad. The sergeant grunted. Good. Then you'll be the first to step aside. Jackson took another step. He was now beside me. He slowly, deliberately, raised his rifle. Not at me. Not at the sergeant. He pointed it at the sky. But he ain't a traitor, Jackson said, his voice now turning to ice. And he's my crazy fool. He's my corporal. And you're not going to shoot a non-com from the 761st. The sergeant's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you threatening me, boy? This is mutiny. No, sir, Jackson said, his eyes as hard as diamonds. This is a clarification of the facts. You're emotional. You lost men. We get it. But you're about to execute a prisoner of war based on zero evidence. And you're about to murder a U.S. Army corporal for disagreeing with you. That ain't justice, that's just hate. Nails, who had been frozen in fear, saw Jackson's move. He licked his lips, his eyes darting between the GIs. He swallowed, and then, with a shaky breath, he raised his rifle too. I'm with the sergeant, he said, nodding at Jackson. This all feels like a mistake. It was a standoff. 3 Black Panthers, their rifles not quite aimed at the white soldiers, but ready. The 2 GIs looked at their sergeant, their own rifles wavering, uncertain. This wasn't a clean execution anymore. It was a firefight. You, the sergeant was sputtering, his authority collapsing. You'll all hang for this, all of you. Achtung, fiend, de drüben. The shout came from the trees 30 yards to our left. A German patrol. The patrol Hannah had warned us about. The moment was shattered. A blue-white burst of an MG-42 ripped through the air. The sergeant, who had been focused on us, was caught completely by surprise. The first rounds tore through his chest, lifting him off his feet and slamming him into the snowy bank. He was dead before he hit the ground. "Contact!" Nails screamed, dropping to one knee and firing into the trees. The two GIs, their leader gone, panicked. One turned to run and was cut down instantly. The other fumbled with his rifle, his eyes wide with terror. "Get down!" I yelled, tackling Hannah to the bottom of the ditch as bullets snapped over our heads. Jackson was no longer a man arguing. He was a machine. "Elias, grenade! Nails! Suppressing fire! Now!" I pulled a pineapple from my harness, pulled the pin, and stood just long enough to lob it into the trees where the MG-42 was flashing. "Fire in the hole!" The whump of the explosion was followed by a scream, and the MG-42 went silent. "Reloading!" Nails yelled. "They're flanking!" The last dog company GI shouted, firing his M1 as fast as he could. "There's too many." Jackson saw it too. 2, 3, 4 German soldiers in white snow smocks moving through the trees to our right. We were pinned. "Eli, the prisoner!" Jackson yelled at me. "What?" "The prisoner, Hannah, make her talk." I looked at Hannah. She was huddled in a ball, my jacket covered in the sergeant's blood. "Hannah!" I shook her. "Hannah, talk to them, tell them to stop, tell them you're here." She looked at me, her eyes vacant with shock. "Hannah, now!" She took a breath. She stood up, her hands in the air. "No!" I yelled, pulling her back down as a sniper round pinged off a rock where her head had been. "Not like that. Yell. Just yell." She understood. She crept to the lip of the ditch and screamed, her voice piercing the air. "Nicht schießen, nicht schießen, ich bin hier. Hannah, ich bin eine von euch. Don't shoot, I am here. Hannah, I am one of you." The firing paused. A voice, hard and authoritative, called back in German. "Wer ist da? Zeig dich. Hände hoch." "Who is there? Show yourself. Hands up." They want me to go," Hannah whispered to me, her face pale. "What do we do, Eli?" Jackson said, sliding next to me, a fresh clip in his rifle. "This is it. Your call." This was the crazy choice, the one that had started it all. I looked at the dead sergeant. I looked at the dead GI. I looked at Jackson, his face grim, but no longer angry at me. He was with me. "We trust her," I said. "God help us," he replied. Tell them you have American prisoners," I said to Hannah. "Tell them, we will surrender." Jackson's head snapped toward me. "Eli, we will not surrender," I said, my voice low, "but it will get us out of this ditch. Go." Hannah called out, her voice a long, complicated stream of German. She was negotiating. The voice from the woods called back. He is Hauptmann Kessler," she said, her voice shaking. He says, if I come out with my captors, he will not shoot. He wants to see." "It's a trap, Eli," Nails whispered, his rifle shaking. "They'll shoot us the second we stand up." "Maybe," I said. I looked at the one remaining dog company GI. He was just a kid. He was terrified. "It's our only way out of the ditch," I said. "Keep your hands on your rifles, but don't raise them. We walk." "This is the craziest," Jackson muttered. "The craziest last thing we will ever do." "On 3, I said. "Hannah, you first. We're right behind you." I pulled her to her feet. She stood up, her hands high in the air, my field jacket a bloody mess. "I am here," she cried in German. "Now," I said. Me, Jackson, Nails, and the terrified kid from Dog Company. We stood up slowly, our weapons pointed at the ground, and walked out of the frozen ditch, out of the frying pan, and into the fire. We were surrounded by German soldiers, their rifles all pointed straight at us. At the center stood an officer in a long gray coat, a Luger in his hand. He looked at Hannah, and then he looked at me, and he smiled. That was Hauptmann Kessler. He wasn't smiling because he was glad to see Hannah. He was smiling because his trap had worked. It turned out she wasn't just a radio operator. She was his protege, maybe more, and he didn't care about her life. He cared about the intelligence she had. We were taken prisoner, all of us. We spent the last 4 months of the war in Stalag 9B. It was a hell I wouldn't wish on anyone. The kid from Dog Company died of dysentery 2 weeks in. Nails lost 2 toes to frostbite. But we survived. Jackson and I, we survived. When we were liberated, the Army wanted to give me a medal for St. Fifth. They said our scouting action delayed the German advance. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know about the choice, the standoff, or the surrender. I refused the medal. People still ask me, why did I do it? Why risk my men for a German prisoner? They called me crazy. Jackson called me crazy. But in that ditch when my own countrymen were ready to kill me for being right, Jackson, he stood with me. He chose the crazy man. War isn't about hate. That's what they get wrong. Hate is easy. Hate is the fuel. But war is about the choices you make when the fuel runs out. It's about deciding what part of your soul you're willing to let die, and what part you'll fight to save. I saved Hannah's life. But Jackson, he saved mine.